We did it! Tyrion lives! Oh, happy day. Well, if you've seen my last Game of Thrones related video, I was pretty worried about our pal Tyrion, you know, who's looking like he was gonna die, be sentenced to death, which was worrying. But he's safe now, he's good. How safe, how good, can't really say. It is Game of Thrones, so anything could happen. And of course, that's, the appeal of the show, that anything can happen. No character is safe. We do sincerely care about these characters, and we are pretty invested in the outcome, which is something that I don't know, with like fantasy, you don't always get. A lot of characters in fantasy are like archetypal characters or whatever. These characters that George R. R. Martin has created and Benioff and Weiss have adapted to the television screen have a lot of dimension to them and a lot of depth, a lot of shades of gray and complications, and nothing is, black and white, really. And that from the very beginning, I mean, that is kind of what they've established with the show, and kind of what it brings that other stories may not quite have. It brings kind of a question to the viewer, and when we kind of empathize with the characters of what would you do? What would you do in this situation? What would I do if I were Ned Stark and I found out what he found out in season one? What would I do if I were Dany with her dragons and her options? List any character, and they always kind of have a what would you do kind of dilemma to them, which brings the show to certain heights that other shows, other stories, fantasy stories, may not do. Like, what would I do if I were Frodo? Yeah, I'd probably try and get that ring, destroyed, because Sauron is 100% evil, and everybody knows that. So, boom, easy. But this one kind of brings, what would you do? And real characters, well, the characters feel real. They make real decisions, real choices, with real consequences to their choices, whether they be what seems to be the right choice. We learned, of course, last season some of Robb Stark's choices weren't that great, but that's not about that. I want to do a review of season 4 specifically, kind of how I feel about it as a whole, but it does kind of continue what the show has been establishing from the very beginning. In addition to that, what they've done in a very clever way, and same with the books, of course. When they first started the show, they did establish certain comfort zones for the characters. Like, we get a sense of the characters in the environments that they're supposed to be in, that they feel most comfortable in. That okay, this character is here, this character is doing this, blah blah blah. And so when conflict arises, things get mixed up, and certain characters find themselves on different paths than maybe they originally anticipated, or paired together with different characters that we wouldn't quite have expected. Like, if you were to tell me season 1, little Arya, little girl, ends up spending a very large amount of time with the little Joffrey's bodyguard, the Hound. I would have said, "Well, really?" But that's something that's been really good about this season that I really liked. I liked their pairing and kind of the weird parental feelings that he's had for her throughout this season. And that's kind of one of the big, standout moments in this season. Where they fight up the whole bar or tavern or whatever over some chicken, and that was kind of like, yeah. But at the same time, Arya, what are you doing? So I don't know, it's pretty cool. But that kind of came to resolution with this season as well, and kind of switched things up yet again. And I thought that was good. And even Sansa's story, like, we've gotten used to just seeing Sansa suffer so much, like, first being betrothed to Joffrey and his constant abuse. Now she's out on her own, but then it seems to be looking even weirder. But now she's kind of sort of starting a sort of relationship with Lord Baelish, Littlefinger, which is kind of weird. but cool, but interesting. It's interesting. It's something that you wouldn't quite expect, and you see kind of just as Arya is kind of being corrupted a little bit, kind of adapting to her surroundings, adapting to the shit that's around her, doing what she needs to do, in her very kind of knightish way. Sansa's kind of doing that in like sort of like a political way. So she knows, she's getting a sense of how to play the Game of Thrones, basically, and she's adapting to her environment, and I thought that was pretty cool. Who else? Jon Snow, of course. It's been a very, very good season for Jon Snow. Of course, last season, he's been with the other free men, basically, the wildlings, their wild ways, and his relationship with Ygritte, which was kind of put to a halt at the end of last season. She puts a couple of arrows in him, doesn't quite end things on a happy level, but he knows nothing. So what is he going to do about it? But he's back at the Night's Watch in this season, and from the beginning of this season, you kind of really get a sense of Jon Snow's Eddard Starkisms very much coming into light. I found kind of becoming this honorable leader, much like his father is, very much keeping his spirit alive, and like kind of. I don't know, like with Ned Stark, I mean, his sense of honor, so way too honorable probably, didn't work in the world in which he occupied, but it seems to be working out really well for Jon in his world, because being in the Night's Watch and having to have this sense of honor seems to be like the one corner of, this world where that's something that may be of use to you. So he does kind of become a leader, he's like, we need to seal up the tunnel, you guys know that, and they're like, ha ha ha, you're stupid, Jon Snow, that bitch was right, you know nothing, ha 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 ha, and, they mock him, basically, but it turns out he was right all along, and they really should have sealed up that tunnel, but, what have you. And there's a great, later on in the season, the second last episode, Watchers on the Wall, where the wildlings are taking siege, and, they're like, okay, you were right, but, we're dealing with the situation. That was really good. Much like, the season 2 episode Blackwater, that episode was devoted entirely to a battle, which was pretty cool. Same director as that episode, Neil Marshall, of course, also directed Centurion and The Descent. I love The Descent. So he's proven to be a pretty good director for these types of episodes, and I hope we see more. Apparently there's going to be some more crazy shit to come in this show, according to book readers, but, don't tell me. I'm still trying to keep up with the books. I'm actually working on Storm of Swords right now, kind of in the middle of it, sort of, maybe a little less in the middle. I'm still afraid to, venture into new ground. I'm still so cautious, so I don't know. I know there's going to be like a point of no return where I'm like, okay, am I going to go past what I've seen on the show, or am I going to see something or read something new? So I don't know. I'm scared. But anyway, with the Watchers on the Wall episode, really cool battle sequence, and it does kind of show something that you don't quite see in these types of things, like, whether you're watching, I don't know, like Lord of the Rings or Troy, or anything like the 300. We're so accustomed to seeing these hordes of CGI soldiers and very flamboyant moves, and I don't know, you become disconnected to it. So there was no maybe a little bit of CGI, but you could tell, the stuff was real. Like the mammoths, you could tell was like some kind of elaborate animatronic or costume or combination of the two, which was cool. The giants, which were actually really creepy, especially in that one part where the guys are like holding up the tunnel and they're reciting the Night's Watch oath. And it's like running towards them and just has this kind of blank face on it. Ugh, so creepy, but so cool. So I really liked that episode. And it just kind of like showed, I don't know, just like the tactics behind their, defensive move. And then kind of the realization of at the end of it all that, there's just going to be more tomorrow, so we have to do something about it. So Jon Snow again takes honor into his hands and tries to resolve the situation, which he does somewhat successfully with the aid of Stannis, who shows up. And by the way, I mean, whatever Stannis' army has been doing, I mean, they, something's gonna happen there. I know. And at first, like when that happened, like, because what I was kind of, sort of predicting, I guess, because again, I don't know the new material in the books. I kind of thought, because of Oberyn Martell's death, I thought there would be, Dornish armies getting really pissed off and, swiping through King's Landing. So when you first see that moment with Jon Snow, in the tents in the Wildling occupation, you see the army. You don't quite see the banners, so you're like, who is that? But no, it's Stannis and his right-hand man, Davos, kind of just going into the place, running shit. And, I really love Davos, too. I mean, he's one of my favorite characters. Because he kind of, I don't know, that character, he should have been dead like 20,000 times by now. But he has a similar sense of honor to him, sort of. Basically, it's been said before, but Melisandre and Davos, they're kind of like the angel and devil on Stannis' shoulders, which I really liked. Somewhere off in the distance, Gendry is still kind of rowing his boat, apparently. A lot of great stuff with Khaleesi, with Daenerys Targaryen in this season. She's the breaker of change. She's liberating people, but it brings up, now that she's ruling, kind of getting practice, basically, for when she takes her crown. Well, let's hope she does, or let's not. What do we hope for? What do we really want? But she's getting to realize, one, I mean, there's one part where she's, sitting on her throne, and she's like, talking to people, okay, whatever, your goat was killed by my dragon, sorry about that, but here, have money. But then she's like, well, okay, so how many more people are waiting in line? And Jorah's like, oh, like a bajillion. And she's like, okay, fine. So that's kind of, she's very good at, the sieges and at the liberation, but how much is she at the politics and actual ruling? So that's something that we got to see in this season quite a bit. And it does bring up kind of sort of like a contradiction of what she's wanting to do in freeing these people. What if their lives were, okay? What if they don't know anything else? And pretty much what she's advised, they'll still be slaves, but not on paper, basically, is kind of what it comes to. So there's a conflict with that. Also with her dragons, getting bigger, getting more aggressive, and sometimes not just killing goats. So there's kind of a heartbreaking decision that she has to make at the end of this season, to chain her dragons up and lock them away, basically, because they're getting too dangerous. One of them's still out there doing something, who knows? Bran, I thought, was very good this season. Kind of learning more about his powers. He's taken hostage, of course. At the very end of the season, he has the aha moment, where the three-eyed crow in person kind of meets with him. He's like, will you be able to make me walk? He says, no, I'll be able to make you fly. What does that mean? What does that mean? So that's pretty cool. And I thought, kind of with Bran and the Reeds, Hodor off on their little adventure, I thought I liked that stuff because it does bring the most fantastical elements to the show. Like, it was so fucking cool. Like the finale episode where the skeletons, the army skeletons are coming out, and like the little kid comes out, like, and it, I thought that was cool. I think they kind of threw like a nod to Army of Darkness, where Hodor gonna go, with one of them, which is, I liked. I thought that was cute. I don't know if that's in the books, but I thought that was kind of a nod to Army of Darkness. Since I don't know, there's just something about Jason and the Argonauts, the Army of Darkness. We like seeing skeletons running around trying to kill people. I don't know, but I did like the stuff with Bran this season. I'm very interested to see where it could be going, because it's probably just going to get even more out there and more fantasy elements to it, which I like. I mean, I like the political stuff. I like, this stuff with, Lannisters being naughty. I like that. But this kind of, I don't know, brings brings it to your, reminds you basically that this is a fantasy show, that there is, fantastical elements to it, magic and sorcery and other worldly things to it, in addition to, the giants and mammoths and things and the like, basically. Good season for the Lannisters, I thought. Jaime, of course, he came back at the end of last season, and he's just kind of realizing how he's kind of pathetic, basically. I mean, there's that book of, uh, all the great knights of the King's Guard, and his story doesn't even fill up a page, so he's kind of like, well, what am I doing with my life? And there were controversial elements to that character, like, I don't know. It's best I think in this show in general, it's best to stay off the internet, because one, of spoilers for someone like me who hasn't, read all the way through the books just yet. But apparently, there's one scene with him and Cersei where it's in the book it was just written as a love scene, in the show it was written as a rape scene. So there's that. I mean, but I think, now that the season is over, it was a hot topic, a while ago, but I think people have kind of just made their peace with that or whatever. But I do, like, again, now that the season's over, I kind of see why they may have done that, because the argument is that, okay, Jaime is going through a redemption arc, but, I mean, really, he pushes a fucking kid out the window in the very first episode of this fucking show, so, I mean, whatever, but still, it's like, I really like Jaime, I do, and it's weird to say, but at the same time, if, let's say they didn't have that rape scene, I mean, you'd like him way too much, I think, because here he is on Tyrion's side, he's like, don't worry, bro, I got you. Here, I'm gonna go to fucking Fraggle Rock, and I'm gonna fucking, throw away all I wanted just for you. I want to keep you alive. We'll fix the trial. You confess. I'll help you out, bro. And when, he's the only one to visit. What is Cersei gonna visit him when he's in prison? They have the nice little chats together, which I liked. I think those were some of my favorite moments of the season, when it's just Tyrion and Jaime in the dark, kind of, brotherly love, I guess, which, whatever. And then when, Oberyn is fighting, Jaime's like cheering on, like, yeah, he got this, whatever. And then, of course, the very last episode, he's the one who frees Tyrion from the prison. So it's like, you almost like him too much, so I think they kind of added that in. I think they knew what they were doing. I mean, this wouldn't be the first time they turned a love story into a rape, apparently. Or a love scene into a rape, apparently. But, I think we needed something just to not fully like him, to remind us that he is a very flawed character. So looking back on it now, I think that's kind of why they did that. Not that maybe everyone will agree with that, but I think we needed something to not quite like him, because we shouldn't quite like him. He is a Lannister after all. Well, I mean, I like Tyrion, he is Lannister, but whatever, you know what I mean. You know what I'm trying to get at here, basically. So what else? I mean, and again, Cersei kind of does her thing where she's, again, trying to not so much manipulate him, but she does reveal to Tywin Lannister that, the rumors are true, that, bro and sis knocking boots, and our children are product of incest, so what are you going to do? So yeah, there's that. Backtracking a little bit, of course, this season was a season that a lot of people were looking forward to. A lot of people got a sick satisfaction about, schadenfreude about. Joffrey Baratheon. He died in a very, very shocking way. Someone had spoiled for me that he died somewhere around this point, so I was kind of anticipating it, but I didn't know quite how, quite when. But of course, his drink is poisoned, and that's how Tyrion, got kind of framed for it, basically. So, I mean, definitely for a character that's just so hated. Jack Gleeson, what a great performance, and being such a fucking little fucker that you just hate so much. I thought he, did a great job, and as this season has passed, I'm like, damn, we could have used such a great antagonist a little bit more. There's still, other characters that you can hate quite a bit, but not quite as much. The Bolton bastard, I think he's pretty hateable as well. I don't know, but I'll in a weird way. I mean, I'll miss Joffrey. Like, I don't know. You break your arm or something, you get a cast, and when it's gone, you're not used to it anymore, and you're like, I hated that thing, but it feels like it should be still there. I don't know. But his death was particularly gruesome. Like you see the blood coming out of him, his eyes are bloodshot, and all the goop coming out of him. It's pretty disgusting. So I think that was also their trick, to bring more shades of gray into it. If, I don't know, let's say, for example, Arya rides in with the Hound. She takes a big fucking sword, lops Joffrey's head off. She's like, take that, motherfucker. I think that would be cause for, fist pumping. Like, yeah. But it's never quite like that, is it? Even if justice, so to speak, is served, it's never in the way you quite expect, which is just another thing about this show that keeps you on your toes. I don't know, but it was a gruesome death, and at the same time you kind of feel happy about it, but you kind of feel like, whoa, that's just a kid being poisoned. As shitty as a person as he is, it's kind of it stayed in my memory. This image of poor little Joffrey. But so of course Tommen gets named the new king of King's Landing, of the realm, basically. And Marjorie's still kind of doing her thing. There's some I don't know, almost bordering on like, hey, this is HBO, but let's not show anything too racy. Or too statutory on this show. So that was interesting, and it was kind of funny, those scenes. So they kind of played the humor with Tommen a little bit, but Tommen is basically, he's like peripheral presence. I mean, really, when you get right down to it, once Joffrey is dead, once Tommen is named the king, that's in name only, basically. Who's the king? Tywin is the king, really. And it was kind of like what he's almost been hoping for the whole time. He's like, oh, it's just my duty, blah, blah, blah. But no, he that's his wet dream, basically, whatever. So it was interesting seeing him fully in charge, first being the Hand, now essentially being the king. So I thought that was really a good next step for the character. Charles Dance, such a great actor. One of the huge gets for this show, I'd say. It's such an accomplished and great actor. He was, they're not, Game of Thrones is doing him any favors, but he brought a legitimacy to the show, and, real, classical trained actor to the show, which, he just really, he did a great job. Absolutely did a great job playing Tywin Lannister. Of course, at the end of the season, he gets killed. And he is killed by his own son while sitting on the shitter, which, what a way to go after all that. And in the end, in fact, he did not shit gold. But, it's, again, kind of with Joffrey, it's like, man, I can't, how is this show going to feel without him? Even though, he was an asshole, kind of, but you can, any character who's an asshole, like Joffrey, you don't know what's going on in his crazy head. He's a product of incest. He's a monster, basically, whatever. But Tywin, you get what, he's all about, basically. You know that there is a huge financial concern for the Lannisters. You know that even though he's very blunt about what he's doing, trying to marry off to different houses, to keep up the Lannister name, basically. He does, in fact, have his family in mind. So, it's not all just to be an asshole, basically. He knows what he's doing. But at the same time, I think he didn't quite, I don't know. I think kind of his breaking point, when the point I should have known that, this is the end. He got too focused on wanting Tyrion to die. I mean, and he even says when they're confronted, he has the arrow pointed right at him. He's like, "Why would you go through all this? You know I didn't do it." And you kind of think, yeah, I mean, his head has been somewhere else. If he would have put focus somewhere else other than that, I think he just kind of took his eyes off the prize, basically. So, when you make decisions like that, whether conscious or unconscious, there will be consequences. In this case, damn, I mean, should have known this whole time. This whole thing was leading up to it because the relationship between Tywin and Tyrion was always heated, to say the least. And of course, it doesn't help that he was betting Shay, who, we kind of thought, apparently, well, and even reading it, I'm getting, kind of the sense that, Shay definitely is different in this show, and we believe even more so that it is a legitimate love story between Tyrion and Shay. But it turns out this whole time, what, was she just an asshole? So that kind of sucked. But it all just happened so fast. Like that last episode with Tyrion, it was like a fever dream. It was really something. So I don't know. It just sucks. But whatever. Such is Tyrion's life. He always goes through hardships. Who knows what's next for him? That's what I'm really curious about finding out. And I gotta read these books. I mean, I don't want to wait so long to find out. And I mean, you got him and Varys kind of together, and what's gonna happen there? They're gonna hit the road. What are they gonna do? I mean, he can no longer say, "Hey, I'm a Lannister." So I mean, it's gonna be some rough times ahead for Tyrion, and I'm thinking there's going to be at least some point where he's like, you know what, I should have chosen to go to the Night's Watch, maybe, I don't know, but, geez, what else, oh, in the last episode, there's a great face-off between Brienne and the Hound, and who the fuck is going to win, two fan favorites, only one can make it out alive. That was a really great fight, and, what happens afterward, the Hand, of course, he loses, and Arya's just kind of sitting there blankly, and he's like, trying to egg her on, be like, kill me already. And it is sad because, with the Hound, I think some part of him, he's, realizing what a shitty life he's led. I mean, what a despicable life he's, devoted his entire being to. And he kind of found some, without, without really saying it, found kind of like a surrogate daughter in Arya, and kind of showed her the way, and you can see kind of sort of a glimmer in his eye when she's killing somebody, which is weird, but what have you. But he was trying to somewhat get some kind of redemption, and if he could just show this poor girl the ways of the world, basically, I don't know, but whatever. Of course, she leaves him for dead, so we don't really know. I mean, that's kind of the thing here. I mean, we have also the Mountain, who I thought was dead. I thought both the Mountain and Oberyn both were dead. I thought that. Turns out not so much, but he is poisoned. Of course, Oberyn kind of laced his spear with poison, so they're hooking something up to him. Some kind of sorcery is going on, making him into Bane or something. I don't know, but if these Clegane guys, they just keep on going. So maybe we haven't seen the last of the Hound. Maybe, I don't know. But of course, Brienne and Podrick, Podrick is, I don't know where he's at. He's as Joe Pesci would say, he's a dizzy motherfucker. So they lose Arya, and she's off on her next adventure, and it's going to be very interesting where she winds up. So again, I mean, it's just keeping on with what it's been doing since the very beginning, getting out of comfort zones. We can never be in one area too long enough, or have two characters paired up long enough before the comfort is kind of broken, because that is interesting storytelling. Like, I wouldn't be watching this show if the Starks were all still in Winterfell, everything was going smoothly. Ned said, "Hey, I found something out. I don't know if we should talk about it." Cersei's like, want to kind of keep it on the DL, and be like, okay, let's just kind of make the best out of this. So I mean, that wouldn't be interesting, would it? So as much as it is about a what would you do thing, it is also, conflict has to keep the story going. There has to be conflict that comes of these situations. If there's no conflict, there's no story, and it's not interesting, and we're not all obsessed over seeing it like the Game of Thrones fan base is, and the Song of Ice and Fire fan base is. What else to say? I mean, really, really great performances all throughout the series. Still a lot of stuff that's being kept in the dark. With the White Walkers, there's some Walker King who's like freezing babies or something. I don't know what that's about. People on the internet are saying, "Oh, look at that! Pay attention to that." I'm like, okay, and I don't know. Lots of great action this season. Jon Snow, who I really like. I mean, it's been a very good season for him. I think the standouts probably were Jon Snow and Tyrion and their stories. Some could argue that Dany's story is at a standstill, which I'd somewhat agree with, but I think it's a necessary piece of the puzzle. I mean, she's always just been kind of on this completely other spectrum of the entire story. Like everything else is connected except for Dany, who's like slowly but surely. So I'm wondering where that all goes. I mean, is it going to be as simple as she shows up with her army and she's like, boom, I'm running this now? I don't know. That'd be a little bit too easy, don't you think? I mean, I just have this idea in my head of, The Shining, Scatman Crothers, the whole movie, he's like on his way to the Overlook Hotel. He comes in 5 seconds later, he's dead, axe in the gut. So I'm wondering if something like that is going to happen. It'd be very sort of humorous, but devastating at the same time. So I don't know what's going to be going on with Dany and what's going to be going on with if she's going to be ruling, or if her experiences in this season are going to kind of put her off to it, and maybe she'll kind of bow out. Maybe who knows? It's just very interesting. Again, just like, what would you do? What are these characters' choices? What are they going to think about all this? Where are their paths leading them? Sometimes the paths change. So, I mean, just a fantastic show. What else can I really say? I know I've probably left out some huge season 4 elements, but what have you. It was a big season. It was a very eventful season. It escalates just as Game of Thrones does, and just keeps getting more intense and more intense. Can't wait to see what happens next. Maybe I'll have to get into this. I'll have to read. I don't know if I want to wait that long, but I'm scared to. But I just love this show so much. Just one of my favorite television shows ever. So it's been a great season, full of great moments. There are some very humorous elements to the show as well. Oh, geez, wait, let me talk about this. Oh my God. I was kind of going through season 3 again, and I really liked the Jon and Ygritte relationship, and then of course in this season, Ygritte dies, which was very sad. But at the same time, it was like, I think too much time was spent between the end of season 3 towards the 9th episode of the season. Like, you see them from time to time, they're separate, but it probably should have been a lot more devastating than it actually ended up being. Having said that, it still was pretty awful to see Ygritte die. But I mean, at the same time, there's probably just no way that these two kids could have gotten together. I mean, when you think about it, what if she said, "Okay, I abandoned all the wildlings. Let me live with you, Jon Snow"? I mean, really, is that going to happen? No, I don't think so. So they're just star-crossed lovers, and it is sad. I mean, and you hear him talk a little bit about it at the beginning of the episode, where he's kind of like stumbling on his words with Sam. Oh, and a very good season for Sam too. Oh my God, I'm going to keep on going, aren't I? A good season for Sam. Showing his bravery a little bit more, and kind of falling in love a little bit, kind of tempted by the flesh, basically. But Jon's talking to him about the relationships and things like that. So I thought that was kind of, it was like almost like an unnecessary heartbreak that Jon has to endure to kind of, I don't know, like seem more focused on the larger task at hand, because there's big things to come for Jon Snow, I am sure, now that he's kind of in sort of good company with Stannis. And there's that great shot, where they're burning the bodies, and you see Melisandre, and then you see Jon. It's like, and it's really cool. So yeah, a lot of great stuff to come. The Game of Thrones keeps on kind of evolving, and the game gets more complicated. Basically, there's people vying for the throne. There's people with rightful claims, not so rightful claims. Um, so yeah, I mean, you win or you die. There is no middle ground. So that's my review of Game of Thrones season 4. Battling on for over a half hour now, but I really like the show. It's such a great show. I love it so much. But anyway, thank you for watching. Comment, rate, subscribe, and Valor Margolis. Thanks for watching.